Hey YouTube family, how are you guys doing? Hope you're all doing well. Just getting home from work. It's been a long day, and I just wanted to give you a little update on the Mini-Strat. It has found a new home, and it's on its way right now to Welland, Ontario, where it will be given to one of my subscribers' grandson. Just a young boy, and he's developing an interest for guitar. So I hope this little guitar, freshly set up, gig ready, if you've seen the videos, they're posted in the description below, brings this little guy years of music motivation. So enjoy the new Mini-Strat, and I'm glad it found a new home. And completely unrelated to that, in some of the comments of the video where I played the Mini-Strat live, I had quite a few comments from people saying that they really liked that country rock guitar tone that I had. And they asked if I wouldn't mind sharing my tone chain, so to speak. Yeah, I got no problem with that. I just never really thought people would care. But yeah, I can show you what I use. It's pretty simple. So here it is. So most of you guys have heard my playing, so you know that I'm not a fancy guy whatsoever. And yeah, I got rid of all my expensive guitars years ago when I realized that, you know what? It just doesn't matter what I play. I sound like me. And I got sick and tired of spending thousands of dollars on brand name instruments and still having to set them up and do fretwork and change pickups. And so I just stopped. I just stopped, and I started buying budget guitars when COVID hit. And I've been so impressed. And this, I gotta say, would be my main gigging guitar, other than the Mini-Strat that I used, in that video. So this is, I call it my Vader caster. It's just an M-Musi Virgo Classic Black. Originally, it was all chrome with a white pickguard. And I blacked it out. So black tuners, black Graphtec nut, black string tree, black pickguard, black hardware, of course, on the backside as well. And just a few months ago, I installed a set of Joe Barton Modern T Gatton Tele pickups. Those things are killer. And they were almost as expensive as this whole guitar here in Canada anyway. So yeah, so that's my main gigging axe. I run a UX wireless system. Featured that on my channel a while back, and that thing is awesome. The strings that I typically use are the DR Dragon Skins. They're coated strings. I'll either use these or I'll use the Elixir OptoWeb strings when they're available, and I can get them on sale, because here in Canada they're almost $25 a package. It's ridiculous. I like the coated strings because they last. They just last a long time. And they just seem to stay fresher longer. So that's what I use for my main guitar. I mean, I have a bunch, and I'll take different guitars to gigs all the time, and they're all budget guitars, and nobody knows the difference, So that's it for my my axe, I guess. And then for a cab, when I play a bigger stage, I use this. So this is my Laney Cub cab. It's a 212, but it's highly modified. So I got rid of the Laney speakers that are in the back of that thing, because quite frankly, and I don't want to insult anybody, but those Laney speakers really suck. They sound super thin and shrill, and absolutely hated them. But I love the size of the cab. It's super small. It's basically just big enough for two 12-inch speakers in there. And it's not heavy. It's got feet on the bottom, as it sits now, and it's got feet on the end. So I usually run it vertically behind me. And these cabs, the newer versions come with a handle, I think, but these did not even have one. So I installed that handle, just an Amazon purchase. It's great, works fantastic. And that cover that I had, where is it, behind me here? That cover is from Cover Amp Canada. So they're a company out of Quebec. And they make these fantastic lifetime warranty covers, and they are awesome. You just, go on the website, take your measurements, punch them into their measurements table, and a couple of weeks go by and you get a nice super duper cover in the mail. It's awesome, and it always fits perfectly. So yeah, that's the cover. And in the back of this thing, I have a couple of Alnico speakers. So I have the Guitar Warehouse Black Hawk speaker, which is a 50-watt Alnico speaker. And I have it matched up with the Celestion Alnico Gold. And both of these speakers I got on sale, so because I would never pay the full price for these. They're way too expensive for my blood. Yeah. So another thing that's a little different in this setup that I have is both of these speakers are wired independently to their separate jack up here. So the bottom speaker here is wired to this jack, and the Gold is wired to this jack. Now, interestingly enough, when I did that the first time, nothing was working. I was like, what's going on? And it's because this plate here that these jacks mount to is metal. And so, so these jacks were connected sort of like via ground because, metal was making contact with both of these. So I had to completely insulate the two. So I just made some plastic washers out of a credit card. So I have a plastic washer on the front and the back side of each of these jacks. And the threaded part of the jacks I have covered in just plumbing tape. And so that completely insulates one from the other. So now both my speakers are totally independent. And then you're probably asking, well, why do you want like two separate speakers? Because that's like having just like one 12-inch speaker and then having another. So don't you need 2 amps? And yeah, that's what I do. So here is my board that I use. And that's pretty much my setup. Again, super simple. So just like I got rid of my super expensive guitars, over the last few years, I got rid of all my expensive amps. Like I had amps that were $3,000-$4,000, and I was always changing tubes, adjusting them because in humid areas they seemed to change the sound. If the place was cold that we were playing in, it seemed to give me a different sound, and it was just, love the expensive tube amps, but man, they are finicky. So I started using the Quilter stuff years ago, and it's just fantastic, for what it is. And again, the way I play, you're not going to be able to tell if I'm using a cheap amp or an expensive amp. Like I'm not good enough to justify a $4,000 or $5,000 amplifier. Like it's just right. These are good enough for me. They're fantastic. So this is my setup. So basically, I have my new X wireless in my Polytune 3. Which goes into the EQ pedal, which I barely ever use. It's just there if, I use a guitar with like a lower output pickup, I can kind of use it. Or if I'm using like a Super Strat that has like a humbucker single, when I go to the single pickups, or I go especially in position 2 and 4, I will hit the booster so it kind of just gives me a little bit of more volume equilibrium, if you will. And then the SP compressor is next. From the SP compressor, I go into a little mini-wah, which I only use in a couple of songs. And then in the mini-wah, it goes to my drive pedal. And then finally, the last thing on my chain, it goes into a delay, which is my T-Rex, which I did a video on. And then from there, it goes to the Spark Booster. From the Spark Booster, it goes into my JHS ABY box. And then one side of the box goes into my Quilter Superblock UK. The other side goes into my Quilter Superblock US. And then coming out of my US, I go into the Gold. It just sounds better for some reason in the Gold than it does in the Blackhawk. And in the UK amp, I line out and I come to the Blackhawk. It just sounds better than it does the Gold, so that's why I chose those. And again, like I said earlier, they're completely independent. So I run the UK amp a little hotter and the US amp a little cleaner. and that way it gives me kind of two separate guitar tones, and then I line out each of my amps to separate channels on the board, and that, it kind of adds a little bit of ambiance, and it sounds like there's an extra guitar there, but there really isn't. It's just me, and that's it. It's super simple. That's basically what I use when I'm out playing. Nothing fancy, and I'll switch between the bridge, middle, and the neck position. So, because if you seen me or heard me play, I am not a fancy player. I don't need a bunch of fancy stuff. I just want a decent clean tone and a couple of drives, and that pedal offers me that. And then a boost for some leads, and a wah for some effects on some songs, and just a delay. And I like that delay because it has a tap tempo on it. That's my setup. That's how I get that little country rock kind of tone. And some people like it, some people probably don't, but for me, it works. And like I said before, I've had like super expensive guitars and super expensive amps, and I was never happy with my sound, and I am now. I mean, this stuff isn't cheap, don't get me wrong. Those speakers are expensive. That cab was pretty cheap. That pedal board setup isn't, the cheapest, that's for sure. And that guitar, here in Canada, those guitars were like $485 to buy new from Amazon when they were available in Canada. And those pickups here in Canada are just over $3. With shipping, taxes, duty fees, exchange rate from the US, those pickups are super expensive for us Canadians. And then, the upgraded parts. And so, yeah, like it's not, cheap gear by any means, but one of my amps would have paid for all of this stuff. So, yeah, I used to be really a brand name snob and a gear snob, and I'm just not anymore. It just doesn't make sense. So, yeah, that's it, guys. If there's anything you guys want to know, leave it in the comments, and I will do my best to answer. You guys take care. God bless, and see you next time.